It's the final word daily, the boarding of Asker daily, day 4 at Perth, the fourth and final day of this test match. This show brought to you by, well, a number of people. Visit Victoria. More about them next week. Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, the number one plaintiff law firm in the country. More about them later. And CBUS Super as well. Not to mention our patrons. But Jeff, sum up the day in 30 seconds.
Australia started the day 522 runs behind with 2 days to survive. Did not seem likely. Seemed less likely when Usman Khawaja was out early for 4. Top edge to pull shot. Smith batted okay for a while with Head. Put on 60 odd. Made 17. Travis Head had some fun. Made 89. Smashed the ball around. Mitchell Marsh, a couple of sixes. Made 47. Chopped on. Bumrah comes back and gets Head. And on they go through, the lower order falls away relatively quickly. Alex Carey, the last one out. But, they didn't lose by 500. They lost by 295. Marginally better for Australia than it could have been. India get a massive, whopping, stonking win to start their series.
Bumrah was very happy. Massive, stonking happiness from him. Bumrah, 3 for 42. Siraj, 3 for 51. Sundar chipped in with 2 wickets either side of T, 2 for 48. 1 apiece for Rana and Reddy. Great debut for Reddy. 41 first innings, 38 not out in the second. And picking up the wicket, the Mitchell Marsh that you referred to before the chop on. Just to start with, let's go to the very beginning of the day when Australia went from 3 for 12 to 4 for 17. When Usman Khawaja played a shot that I still can't quite process. Second over of the day. Good bumper from Siraj, and gets his back into it when he decides to.
You can do it, Siraj.
You can do it. Get your back into it, and drew that false stroke. I just don't really know what was going on from Khawaja then. Out behind us here where the nets are.
Yeah.
He spent. Libby Cameron took a nice photo this morning of him addressing the team in the huddle out in the back, and I guess the idea was he was showing some leadership there, and he does do that quite a fair bit, only to get out in the second over. It doesn't look crash up.
Well, you've got a player who could maybe, in that he has once, and he's played some long innings later in games. He's got the big one in Dubai, but there are a couple of longer innings sort of as the game's wearing on where fatigue should be a factor, and he's the one who's got the zen zone sort of thing where he can bat for a long time. Now, obviously, they're not going to save the test match. They're not going to bat for 2 days. It would have been an Australian record by like 30 overs had they done that. It wasn't going to happen. But you still need a Khawaja to be the one to at least bat for a while to try to give the others some example. And just playing a pull shot seems so bizarre when you don't know what the bouncer's doing. The bouncer's erratic, and it's so early on. You haven't got a gauge of the pitch, and you play that shot. It must have just been impulse, instinct that made him do it. But that's the point where you go, Australia are not really going to make they're not going to make it that difficult for India.
Well, that's the point when you start looking up stats like had they been wristalled for 104 or less or pure in both innings, would have been the first time since 1890 that something like that had happened. You're looking at stats like that. Now, as it turns out, the reviews will be brutal, internally, externally, and we'll come to a little bit of that later on. They get to something verging on credibility. 238 doesn't have the same pep to it as what happened in Hobart in 2016 where they were all out 85, then all out, 120 or something like that. Because Head gets to 89 and
I think
gets a beauty from Bumrah
because that partnership was fun, that's sort of what... I think that's changed the mood a little bit. Because the Head and Marsh partnership was a good time if you're an Australian. It means, had that not happened, there are effigies of Andrew McDonald being burned in Claremont tonight. They're throwing rocks at his house back in Melbourne. That's probably happening.
I wish we did effigies here. It's one of the things, it's not great, effigies as a starting point. I mean, they're not a positive thing, let's be honest, what they represent and so on. But, fuck, they're fun.
Be fun.
Yeah, they make for great
bonfire
picks.
Bonfire night. Great picks.
Effigy of, take your pick. Well, in 2016, when it was all out 85 in Hobart, there were effigies of everyone. It was the chief executive must go, the chief selector must go, the chairman must go, the high performance director must go, the captain must go, and the coach must go as well. It isn't quite a must go vibe. I don't detect a must go desire. I don't see, the chief executive of the organisation doing a press conference in crisis tomorrow and commissioning a review. And that's been staved off partly, one, credits in the bank, and 2, because today didn't feel as brutal as it could have at 4 for 17. If it's all at 100, I think the vibes are just different.
Then it is, Nick Hockley is coming out on the front steps tomorrow probably. If they get bowled out for 100
That's right.
today.
George Bailey's next to him and, we're having that kind of conversation.
Full support of the board.
Full support of the board and then eventually someone gets sacked because that's what happens and someone gets dropped and so on. So we're not quite there. But just I want to say one thing which relates to Khawaja's dismissal. Getting it to day 5 would not have been for nothing. Getting the Indian bowlers, I know they've got a long gap to Adelaide, but making them, jump in the ice bath tonight, then warm up tomorrow and bowl on I guess it would have been bowl for a 4th day in the test match. There would have been I talk about marginal gains all the time in Test cricket. There would have been a marginal gain to have been achieved there. They fall 30-odd overs short of that safe harbour, for want of a... Not safe harbour, but that hurdle.
Moving from one dangerous harbour to another dangerous harbour where your ship sinks.
But, probably 2 hours away from that being achievable. And, that's the sort of thing Khawaja could have facilitated early on. So, and look, Smith was batting that way too. He was gutsing it out and complementing Head quite nicely, who was playing in a more... you would say Head was playing his natural game, would be a euphemistic way of saying it. He was trying to score heavily. It took two great balls. Siraj to Smith was... Well, if it wasn't ball of the day, then the ball from Head to Head from Bumrah was, or maybe the one from Sundar to line, which will be underrated because it was when the game was already over. But still, there was some fine bits of bowling which broke up those two partnerships.
Yeah, and the fact that it was Bumrah coming back to knock off Travis Head, it felt symbolic. That clinches him for player of the match, which I'm glad that he got. Bowlers should get it more.
Should have got it even if he took none for 50 in the second dig. He changed the match.
And I'm sure there'll be people who'll say, well, Jaiswal should have got it because he made 100. Well, it doesn't matter if he makes 100 if Bumrah doesn't do what Bumrah does in the second innings of the match. That's the thing.
Jaiswal was the second best player in the match, and that's okay.
And that's okay. And he, his innings wouldn't have mattered if they'd conceded a 100-run lead on the first innings.
Where are the Bumrah stands?
Yeah.
You got your Kohli versus Rohit stuff. You got your demagoguery around Dhoni and the way that Sachin still gets lauded despite having been retired for however many years now.
90 years, 92 years.
Sachin retired for 92.
Coming up. Yeah, I think so. That feels like that.
Right. I thought, is there a gag here I'm missing? No. But where's the Bumrah stands? Where's the, I want that.
Where's the gold statue of Bumrah in Mumbai?
They should recognise that this guy is turning himself into one of the finest fast bowlers to ever play the game. We went on a bit of a rant about this the other night. Rant might be the wrong word. We really went for it the other night about how well he bowled and how happy he is as captain. That interview he did with Adam Gilchrist after the test tonight was totally joyous, and I'm so glad that it was not only the captain's interview, but the one for player of the match as well. Right. I mean, there's some serious wind coming through this joint. Yeah, I'm going to pick up your glasses. Real tumbleweed energy. I might need those later. So, okay, let's talk about India. Let's talk about the significance of this achievement. To come here, so they won the first test of the series in Adelaide in 2018. That was important. Winning the first test in a 5-test series feels more important, right? Like I think we talked about this on one of the preview shows. In a 4-test series, they won both of those by winning 2 test matches. 5-test series, you got to win 3. You could win it 2-1, but you're unlikely to get 2 draws in 5 test matches between these two teams. The way things go, the way pitches go, the way the game is played these days, that's unlikely to be the case, right? Unless you get some serious washouts. Hello, Sydney. But you're unlikely to get 2 draws in the series. So really you've got to win 3 test matches. And you've got, to be able to take the first opportunity to do it, to be able to do it by a massive margin. So 295 runs in the end, but they're 500 ahead. And to turn it around, so I was looking at this today in terms of the context of other massive beatings, and people were talking about Australia being flogged in other games, Trent Bridge and Hobart and all the rest of it. All of those are games where Australia is behind from minute 1, basically. They get smashed in their first batting innings, or a team makes 600 against them batting first, in the way that sort of happens in India, or the tests in India where Australia would make 240 and then India would make 620. Those kind of games where you're never in it. You're never ahead of the game. This one, I think, would be much more galling for Australia because they were ahead of it, because they bowled them out for 150 on day 1 and then had this sense of dismay that the game was getting away from them. But for India to turn that around, to be the team that doesn't freak out, all out 150, Bumrah's the key there, leading and bowling, to come out and make sure that they got those early breakthroughs and made sure that they were in the game. But to have the mentality to not stress out in the second batting innings, to come out and bat the way they did with that opening stand, to come out and finish the job off with almost everybody contributing in that third innings of the match. It's an extraordinary performance on foreign shores in unfamiliar conditions to a point, although conditions are less unfamiliar for modern players given that they travel more, they have better practice facilities and that sort of thing. And I just wonder how good an Indian test side could get when they've finished developing that National Academy thing that they're building up, where they're aiming to have pitches that will mimic everywhere in the world. So you can walk into this joint and bat in Johannesburg, or bat in Perth, or bat in Dhaka. They'll have surfaces that will mimic every place that you might show up with a bat in your touring schedule. I mean, Jesus Christ, 10 more years, the Indian test team
and they will keep playing Test cricket against somebody. They could be unbeatable at that point.
I want to bat in Kathmandu.
Yeah.
Where else do you want to bat? I mean, it's a depth story here.
Kabul. We'll probably never get to go to Kabul.
The
The Kabul away day is
it's
not on the cards.
Yeah, no, it doesn't feel that way. Nor should it.
But I'd like to know how to get on, how it plays off a length at Kabul.
Yeah, first thing, it's a depth story. Nitish Kumar Reddy, who was no dead cert to play in this match, has demonstrated with bat and then subsequently with ball today how much, and Harshit Rana much the same on the first night when he knocked over Travis Head with probably the ball of the match in an extremely competitive field. Speaking of competitive fields, India away wins. I remember in 2018 when I was covering the England-India series in England with CricBuzz with Harsha.
Right.
And Harsha was just so delighted at watching an Indian pace attack be as successful as that away from home. He's like, never in my life have I seen anything like this. Where the Indian pace attack is as formidable as it can be on its day. Now, I know India lost that series 4-1. It was one of those quirky ones where it could have easily probably been 3-2 the other way. But I digress. The point is that from that juncture onwards, India's bowlers away from home, their seamers away from home, have been largely outstanding. And it's been Bumrah right at the front of all that. And yes, there was the veteran Ishan Sharma, and they had there have been others, of course. There have been others. Umesh Yadav's a good example of that. Yeah, and Mohammad Shami, who's been the new ball partner of Bumrah for most of this. But you put it all together and you add into it the 150 all out on day one and who they're missing in this test match. I think it is one of their great away from home wins ever. I think it is right alongside wins such as Brisbane. I know Brisbane, they were so depleted and it was to win the series and there was the extra overlay.
It's come from behind and it's more exciting in that way.
But Kohli wasn't there as captain.
But this has come from behind. This has just come from behind to then go miles in front.
They're all great. You can put them on the podium wherever you want, but this deserves to be like right on that podium, I think, in modern Indian away from home victories, along with the success they enjoyed here in 2020 and 2021. In 2018, it was different. 2018-19, when they won at Adelaide, it was a nip and tuck test match where they got over the line against the depleted Australian team, and then they won in Melbourne in a thoroughly uninspiring test match on one of the worst pitches I've ever seen, and they were rained off at Sydney, and Australia won the test match here. And, it didn't feel as monumental, although it was the first time they'd beaten Australia in Australia. This feels big. This feels against the nemesis of theirs as well, who'd beaten them the last time they met in the World Test Championship final, largely because Australia's fast bowlers were just too good there. Well, they quelled that, or they suppressed that threat yesterday comprehensively, and the day before as well. And the way in which they had to exercise the demons almost of the One-Day World Cup too, which was significant. I mean, that's only a year ago that it was the unlosable final, as we said at the time. It was Tyson being knocked out, by Buster Douglas. That was what Australia did to India on the 19th of November 2023. Well, just a little bit a year on from that, they're achieving this, and the praise should be spread far and wide.
And I think the contributions are spread around. Padikal's innings was important after KL Rahul did his thing in that third innings. Harshit Rana had a couple of those moments. He's the one who comes in and hurts Australia late when, it's relatively easy to do that because they're already tired and so on, but you've still got to have the courage to come in and do that, play aggressively and compliment Kohli in that kind of way. Like, the way that Reddy's played through the test match has been up for the contest. And there will be changes because Rohit Sharma's got to come back, and there'll be lots of talk about who's going where and is Gill fit and all the rest of it. But probably the only player who maybe doesn't need to be in this team is Washington Sundar. Could come out for one of the other spinners.
And he bowled well.
But he was good with the bat with Kohli as well, put on that partnership of 80-odd.
I thought he bowled okay to that.
He bowled well. There's
probably a few too many darts and a few too many back of a length balls if you wanted to be critical. But, wickets either side, I'd say a terrific catch from Jarrell in its short leg. Reflex catch, full face of the bat. It wasn't an inside edge. That was coming very quickly from Stark's blade. And if Stark's still there at tee, he faced 112 balls in that first innings. It's possible that he and Carey can get them another couple of hours down the road, like I was saying before, and bring day 5 into the frame. But that great piece of fielding, and you compare that to the way that Australia conceded over 50 extras and didn't look sharp at all in the field. That's a story, I think, of preparation. When they were over at the WACA doing their thing internally, after a couple of India A games they used wisely, whereas Australia largely vacated the field with the exception of Nathan McSweeney, who used those games to get into the Test 11. I think that's all part of the story soon.
So we've got a situation where we've got 10 days before the next test match. In terms of the throwing forward and so on, we'll probably do more of that tomorrow because we'll look at it with 24 hours hindsight. What do Australia do? What do India do going towards that Adelaide test? I will say I think it's a bit odd. Like, people are just going all in on Australia are completely shit now. They're going to lose, they're going to be thumped in the series. They're no good. You've got to change everything. Now, after 2 sessions of the test match, India were going to lose this test match.
I was walking into the press box going, 5-0? 5-0? And Glenn McGrath said 15 sessions.
Yeah, 15-0.
So they said they'd win the series. Right. They'd win 5-0 in 15 sessions. Or whatever. 15 days, 15 days.
But it just seems to me that a lot of people who watch cricket literally have no object permanence. Yeah. They cannot remember anything that's previously happened.
And partly that's the fun in games, right? So I'm getting thrown back at me online when I, basically to get a laugh out of Brat the other day on radio, I said Australia would win 4 out of the 5 and they'd pump India, just for laughs, really. And and that's okay, because predictions mean nothing. They're irrelevant.
Sure. But I mean, I still think that this Australian side should win in Adelaide because I think they'll win a pink ball test because I think they're more accustomed to doing it unless their batting falls apart completely against Bumrah again, which could happen. So I mean, the fact that I think they will doesn't mean they will. They might not. India could go 2-0 up and all the rest of it.
What you're saying, you can't read the future?
I can't read the future. But
wow.
But what I find interesting, I suppose, is that just because something has happened doesn't mean the next thing won't happen differently. That's how cricket works all the time.
Yeah.
So let's not get too explosive in one direction or another. But I suppose we can get.
What
into
you're trying to say?
Tomorrow.
There's grey area, and things don't always have to be the best or the worst thing ever to happen.
I'm saying that sequences are misleading, and human brains like sequences, and they read sequences into places where sequences don't exist.
And there is a sequence here where the gap between these teams in Test matches has been growing. I don't dispute that, but Australia. Look, put it this way: Australia aren't suffering from the affliction of wanting to throw all the toys out of the pram. Quite rightly, there's going to be scrutiny over a heavy defeat. That's perfectly normal and perfectly reasonable. There'll be internal reviews, there'll be external reviews. I was interviewing Pat Cummins downstairs before and said as much to him, and he's like, "Yeah, that's fine. That's all part of it." But he kind of countered that by saying that we're still at peace with the plan that we've got going into the series. He said that they wouldn't be doing anything hugely different. They might get to Adelaide a little bit earlier because the test here has ended earlier. They're not going to send anyone to the Prime Minister's 11 game in Canberra. I actually think they should consider that.
Yeah.
I think they should, if they're going to play Labuschagne next week in Adelaide, because it doesn't sound like they're going to make any changes to the top 7. Again, that's reading between the lines a bit in what Cummins said, but he said something like, I'd be surprised if there were changes. So if Labuschagne were to play, I personally wouldn't play him. I'd take him out of the firing line. But if he is going to play, I'd want to give him a chance to bat against India with the pink ball.
Or you base it on that. You have him play the PM's 11, and if he looks dreadful there as well, you go, okay, well, you're sitting out.
I suppose I'd want to have a degree of flexibility, and they do have that. They can change their mind tomorrow morning and say Marsh and Smith even. I know that it wouldn't be particularly flattering having a bloke who's got 32 test hundreds playing with a bunch of kids, but that's okay. You don't have to be too precious about these things.
No. Here's what I would like to see. They pick Marsh and Smith for the PM's 11, and then India pick none of their bowlers because they're like, well, why give them a net? Let's get the spin bowling coach out there. Let's cast around in like Sydney club cricket and see who's available.
Get that Ashwin impersonator from the last time that we were in India. Where were we? Nagpur.
To come out and Jai Aswal gets picked, but as an off spinner,
as a bowler.
So that sort of
Hanuma Vihari gets recalled from first class cricket.
Give him a trundle.
I love that name, Hanuma Vihari.
Hanuma Vihari.
So there's not going to be any major changes is the guts of it. There'll be more tomorrow though, because the wash up with the Australian team, that's taking place right now. All of those conversations are happening in the basement, and we'll get a feel for them, and we'll report faithfully on that front to you when we do our wash-up show tomorrow.
Let's go to the Final Word Hall of Fame after this break.
The Final Word Hall of Fame
That's it.
on the Final Word Daily at the Border Gavaskar Daily. It's brought to you by Visit Victoria, a state you should visit, a state I'm looking forward to visiting, going back to in 2 days' time, a state where we have one of our live shows on the 22nd of February.
Yes.
If that's your thing.
You should come to that. 22nd of February?
No, 22nd of December. That's better.
That is better.
22nd of February, I'll be in England.
You may be in Pakistan at the Champions Trophy. No, you won't. Nobody will be in Pakistan at the Champions Trophy.
No, I think, we will be
in Abu Dhabi at the Champions Trophy.
I'll be at Sharjah and Abu Dhabi at the Champions Trophy when it's stripped from Pakistan. Yep. Anyway, yes, Final Word Hall of Fame is our final word moment of the day for Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, the nation's #1 plaintiff law firm.
#1.
Some of the most experienced and best lawyers in the country, ready to serve you. And by you, I mean run-of-the-mill, everyday working people. I know that can sound patronising, but the point I'm trying to make is you don't have to be old fucking moneybags over here.
No.
You don't have to have your pockets, overfilling with gold, as some law firms can be. That's not how it works.
Do people have pockets full of gold now? I guess
probably not, but once upon a time they did, and at least symbolically.
They sell a lot of gold in the airports in like Qatar and so on, if you're on a transfer there, because there's no tax on it.
Right. Well, in 1919, when Maurice Blackburn Lawyers started, people might have been carrying around lots of gold in their pocket. And they said, fuck that lot. We want to look after working people. Perhaps people who just come home from war, for instance. I'm not entirely sure that's true. It might be true. If it's not true, someone can pull us up on it.
Sure.
But what is true is that they're there for you. They're there for working people, and they've got 30 offices around the country, and they're there to help you when you need legal support, and they're there to make it as straightforward as possible, because the legal system in Australia, as it is anywhere, can be complex, and you don't have to work on that. You don't have to do it on your own. You're not on your own with Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, so consider using them, and their details are in the show notes, as are the details of CBUS Super, celebrating their 40th birthday, 8.87% annual returns across 40 years. We're proud to be in association with them, as we have been since 2018. Their past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance on that MySuper default account. Please get yourself the PDS and all of that, cbussuper.com.au. Jeff.
Hall of Fame, if I can be, unusually on a slightly sincere note for the Hall of Fame, it felt special to have been at this test match when, like, a number of really significant performances happened. Like, I think that Jaiswal innings is one people will come back to if he does as we hope he does and goes on to have a huge career, because it does happen in Indian cricket particularly in Indian cricket, that you get players who burst onto the scene, are great for a couple of years and then disappear, Prithvi Shaw, put your hands up, that kind of thing. I hope he's not one of those, and signs are that he shouldn't be, but the signs usually are that shouldn't be the case. But if he does go on to have the kind of career that he should, being here to see that innings was pretty amazing. Being here to see that Bumrah bowling performance as captain, 2 quicks as captain, figuring out when to bring himself on, when to take himself off, but routinely taking the most important wickets, those 2 opening spells from the 2 innings, blowing the top off them both times, and even the Kohli moment, which I think was well described by someone on commentary today, that he had a soft landing when he came in. It was an easy time to come in and try to make 100, but it's still never easy to make the 100 because most players still don't do it, right? The other players in the team didn't do it. He's the one who did it because he was organised enough. His game is organised enough to do it. And so, if that's something that pushes him into having a big series, those are all pretty special things to be at the ground, to be able to say in 20 years, oh yeah, I was there for that one. Yeah,
I mean, this is unlikely to be Vinod Kumbli, who, had the extraordinary start, was at the 2 double tons in his first 7 test matches, and a whole bunch of stuff happens, and the system doesn't work with him at the time, and that's it for him. And, Prithvi Shaw's another example of a left-hander who... Yeah. But with Jaiswal, it just feels like the stars have aligned perfectly for him. Your best of short-form cricket blended with the best of long-form cricket, and he's got here at the perfect time, just when India is looking towards who's going to be the next generational great. All signs point towards him. So I agree, it was special being here for that, and being here for Kohli's 30th 100 going past Bradman. I was at Smith's 30th. I can't remember which one it was, but I know I was at Smith's when he went to number 30, so...
Well, what is he, 34 now?
32, 34, 32 I think it is.
4, and he's only made 6 in the last... Since the Ashes of 19, he's only made 600s.
Yeah, got one. He got one in Sri Lanka. I think
the one in Sri
Lanka
might have been the one
30th.
against South Africa and Sydney.
Yeah, I've got a feeling the one against Sri Lanka in Gore might have been.
Right.
Anyway, the point is that that's a real number. 30 Test tons is a real number. So we were there for that as well. Hall of Fame from me. Oh, good stat. Australia's top 4 across both innings, so 8 batters, made 29 runs collectively, which is the lowest ever for Australia in Test cricket.
Wow.
It was 38 before this, and there was a little wrinkle because Cummins came in as night watchman.
Yeah.
That was the wrinkle that got them over the line. So you could say night watchman was one of the 8 actors in that, but I'm counting it.
Right, but if you don't have Smith in there for the second inning, or you do because Smith doesn't count with his 17.
Yeah, that's right.
It would have taken them past it.
Doesn't count. Yeah. So that's my Hall of Fame just because it's a nice little quirk.
It was a good innings for 17. He batted for quite a while, but he's got a dismal 4th innings record across his whole career. It's really interesting. Even during his best years, he never made runs in the 4th innings. He made 90. He's made a couple of 90s, which were there was that West Indies innings. I think he's got 6 half centuries, averages about 30. 33
And
maybe.
he's explained why. It's because he says he doesn't sleep during a test, which is not healthy. It's not good.
But he might maybe look into that. Maybe try to get a little
maybe get some
shut-eye.
sleep training. Or,
Because,
maybe take some drugs.
in my estimation, I'm just recreational ones, whatever, have a good time. If you're going to be up all night, you might as well be.
Well, how do we frame this? Yeah, you could go that way.
Yeah.
Or you could just get fucking blazed.
Yeah.
Not off. Big
True.
bag of Doritos and a nice kip.
There we go. It's all,
Next test, Steve.
legal in many, many places now,
Is
Steve.
it legal in Adelaide? Most things are.
It's been legal in Adelaide for the longest of anywhere in Australia. South Australia. Pioneers, Brian. They share our spirit. I've got one more.
okay.
I like that we're playing the Border Gavaskar Trophy, and Border and Gavaskar are both here. That's nice. But I heard a little bit of Sunil Gavaskar on ABC today. You and I were talking on Storytime on our history show a couple of weeks ago about Slasher Mackay batting out a draw against the West Indies in the 60-61 series, taking the last ball of the innings on his chest so that he couldn't get out, 9 down, saving the game. They faced 160 overs, I think, that innings, and that's the longest an Australian team has ever batted to bat out a draw in the fourth. And Gavaskar was talking about that, and he said that when he was a kid, he couldn't listen to it or watch it, but he read about it in the cricket magazines because that's how he followed cricket as a youngster. And he said that he was so inspired by that story that he thought, that's what I want to do. That's how I want to play. I want to play like Slasher Mackay. So Sunil Gavaskar, first to 10,000 runs, the champion of champions in Indian cricket before the modern trilogy came along. Things that I never knew. I've heard him commentating for decades, but this has never come out. His inspiration was Slasher Mackay getting hit in the ribs. Isn't that nice?
Ken Mackay and Lindsay Klein, their legacy lives on. I saw Sonny singing this morning. I walked past him with Haydos, and they were doing something on Star, I think it was, where they were singing. I don't know what the song was, but they were very into it.
Yeah. Okay.
So it'll surprise you to learn Haydos was very into something.
Wow.
With Sonny doing his thing. I had one anti-Hall of Fame. Any long-term listener to this show knows I've been obsessed with Mohammad Siraj from the night that he bowled 4 wides in the final over of an IPL game I was commentating. I've always liked this guy. I've always wanted him to do well. I was at his one-day debut in Adelaide. We were at his test debut at Melbourne. I was commentating on his fifer at Brisbane. I love Mohammad Siraj. I was pumped when he got that wicket today. Early on, the second wicket today, which was the
he gets Khawaja early and he gets Smith.
Yeah, the Smith one was such a gorgeous delivery. Fucking cut out that celeb appeal.
Oh, that was rank.
That was fucking shithouse. Celeb appeals, we do not support. The MCC need to look at that.
Yep.
In my view, that's the case in point for why they need to change the law. Intimidatory, what's the word? Excessive appealings in the laws of the game.
Yep.
You can't be running like fucking Ben Johnson in the '88 Olympics, straight down the middle of the pitch, straight to your wicketkeeper without turning around. That's not on.
Especially when it's not out.
And of course it wasn't out. It was given not out on the field and not out on review.
It was an LBW. It was sliding down the leg side. Yeah, he's high-fiving in the cordon without having looked at the umpire.
Can't be doing that. There's a really easy way to fix that. Sprint backwards. Learn how to run backwards.
Yeah.
Learn how to run backwards and
Ben Johnson could have done that in '88 and he still would have won.
Yeah, quite. 9.83 running forwards. He would have probably still broken the world record.
9.86 running backwards.
As Bruce McAvaney says, if it's legal, which he was really talking about the wind, not the drugs. But
I thought he was talking about Steve Smith getting some sleep.
Yeah, well. I don't think Johnson's with us anymore.
Bruce McAvaney. We'll get Bruce McAvaney in Adelaide.
He does live there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, maybe Bruce.
Maybe he's got some local contacts.
There we go.
Maybe he knows where to hook us up. Bruce, if you're listening.
Been the final word. It's been the Border Gavaskar Day.
I'm with you. I want to add my support to that. I loathed that. I hated that celebration thing. Just ask. Just ask. And especially when it's wrong. They had to review it because he made himself look like a dick by doing that. And it wasn't out, and they're lucky they didn't lose a review.
And the real reason I don't like it is it sets a bad example for kids, by the way, because kids are doing that now. Anyway, we've banged on about this before. We'll bang on about it again until they change the law. Right, that's us. We've got to go. Got to go to the next thing. I don't know what it is, but
you know what? They should change the law too. If the bowler doesn't look at the umpire, it's not out regardless.
Yeah, that might be hard to police. But at the moment, the problem is only someone needs to ask the question.
Only someone needs to ask the question.
So therefore, the cordon or the keeper looking in the direction of the central umpire clears the hurdle.
Yeah.
And it does. So what the bowler does.
But if the bowler celebrates without looking at a decision, not out.
I think you just change it.
The
bowler has to get involved anyway, or at the very least, they can't do what Siraj did today. Enough on that. We're done. Tomorrow, the wash-up ep. The day after the weekly. If you're new to the show, a lot of people found us yesterday for the first time when Kohli made 100. Funny that.
Weird.
We love you all for this. It always happens when Australia play India. New people find the final word. Like, subscribe, hit the button, drop in a comment.
Go to patreon.com/thefinalword. That's how you can help us keep making the show.
And subscribe to the podcast. You've all got fucking Apple Podcasts or Spotify or one of the other ones. We do far more than 20, 30-minute recaps of days. We make a lot of different programming, and if you're new to what we're doing, you're probably going to like it if you're a cricket nutter one way or the other. We will see you tomorrow, then we will see you in Melbourne, and then we will see you in Adelaide. This has been The Final Word. Thanks to Maurice Blackburn, CBUS, Visit Vic, and our beautiful patrons. Good night from Perth.
Bye.